I'm gonna give it to you straight. 15 tips from about 15 years in the industry in under 15 minutes. It's a good thing I talk fast. Tips that not only worked for me, but I've seen work for people around the world to help you rock those results no matter your age. So to not waste any time, tip number 1, and one of the most important keys to results, don't quit. We most often don't see results build because we never stick with anything long enough. We give up at the first feeling that something isn't working, that results aren't happening fast enough, and we jump into something new. This constant jumping from thing to thing never lets us get good at anything or be consistent enough with it for true changes to snowball. Results are built off of those boring, basic habits repeated daily over not only weeks, but months and years. But not quitting and trusting the process is hard, which is why tip number 2 is what gets measured gets managed. If you want to bake a cookie and make sure it turns out, you follow a recipe. This clear plan with everything tracked and measured helps you guarantee a result. If you randomly just throw things in a bowl, you won't know why the cookies didn't turn out or why they were the most ooey gooey delicious cookies ever. Same principles apply to our health and fitness goals. If we have that clear recipe and measure out everything, we can help ourselves make sure we're working towards a focused outcome and more easily adjust if something goes wrong. When we have that clear picture of what we're doing, we don't have to feel frustrated or like we're guessing at what works. We also give ourselves true data off of which to make changes so we can trust the process more and not let feelings that sabotage us make us want to quit. But even embracing tracking, whether it's your food or your workouts or ideally even both, it's a hard thing at times for us to accept. Which is why tip number 3 isn't just to track, but to jump into the changes you least want to make as soon as you can. Yup, the changes you least want to make are the ones you probably need to make the most. One of the most important things I harp on is increasing protein. Guess what change most of us don't want to make? Researching even reasons why we shouldn't increase it. But also guess what change we most often instantly see progress from and wonder why we didn't do sooner? You guessed it, increasing protein. Change requires change. And the changes we least want to make are the ones that are most often the hardest, most uncomfortable, furthest from our comfort zone. But they're also often what is needed to reach a goal we haven't achieved before and bust out of this yo-yo dieting cycle. So if you've been fighting a change, pause, ask yourself why, and then embrace an experiment where you track and see the true outcome. It may just surprise you. And while embracing discomfort is part of achieving results, we can also sabotage ourselves with the no pain, no gain mindset, which is why tip number 4 is to ditch the all or nothing, work harder, no pain, no gain attitude. This attitude keeps us stuck expecting perfection of ourselves, doing more and more until, well, we ultimately run out of willpower, get injured, and fall back into old habits. We're human and flawsome. And when we make changes too hard on ourselves, we're often just making our excuses grow too. It's Newton's third law of motion that says, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Keep trying to do more, and you're going to get a pushback against the changes equally as strong. And the harder we work and the more we do, the more we expect an outcome, when in reality, we cannot exercise or outdiet time. So ultimately, we just make ourselves give up in frustration. Instead, we need to focus on small changes that build and that make change seem doable, which is actually why tip number 5 is to stop the clean eating pressure. There's no official definition of clean eating, and trust me, no one agrees. Vegans and carnivores have vastly different opinions. And trying to hit someone else's arbitrary standards of clean can make you feel like you can't even eat air. It can make you feel guilty for enjoying food and even make us feel like it's impossible to even make a change that will pay off. But we can and should include foods we simply love. We just need to strike an 80-20 balance. 80% of the time, focus on those whole natural foods. 20% include foods you just love with no guilt. This will allow you to create a sustainable lifestyle and truly build consistent habit changes that snowball over leaving you feeling restricted and deprived, so you ultimately fall off of any plan you start. And with embracing your balance, don't just include foods you love, truly plan around them, even planning them in first. Tip number 6 is the secret that led to me ultimately finally achieving the body recomp I wanted. Planning in the foods I wanted first and focusing on nutrition by addition. Often the things we love the most are the things we cut out first. They're the things that don't make the eat clean list. They're also the things we add back in as soon as we can, which leads to us ending up back where we started. Basically, we're repeating a cycle of restriction we can never maintain. And you can't do one thing to reach your goal, then go back to what you were doing before and expect to maintain your results. Plus, the second you tell yourself you can't have something, you want it even more. Instead, plan in the dessert you want, the snack that you love, first to your day, and work your other meals around it. Start by making small changes to your diet, adding in more veggies or protein or something you know is beneficial. This focus on small changes that feel easy often is just what we need to lower our defenses against more changes and see the momentum build. However, in including foods you love, this doesn't mean you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, in any quantity that you want. Which is why tip number 7 is to recognize your trigger foods. No foods have to be off limits, but there are foods we will choose to include or not include. We need to recognize those foods we can't consume in moderation that only lead to us falling back into old patterns. I know I can have just one peanut butter protein ball, but I know I can't have just one Reese's peanut butter cup. I own this fact, and I include the protein ball on a regular basis, but the peanut butter cup only have when I'm okay with having one or like 10. And if I do have peanut butter cups around and I don't want to eat them, I put them in the freezer. For me, this shifts my mindset to be more okay with waiting to have more. While this is odd because technically they taste even more delicious frozen, this freezing of them helps me feel like they'll be there when I want them in the future. It's the shift in environment and mindset that pays off. For you, this shift may come from not having the food in the house, or from putting it into single serving bags so you can only have one serving, or maybe even hide it on a higher shelf. The key is I recognize the foods I can work in, and those I can't do, then determine a balance and even an environment right for me and my goals at this time. So choose to include foods you love, but also understand the foods that may not fit your goals right now, and find ways to address that. The more we own who we are and what has and hasn't worked for us in the past, with our diet and workouts, the more we can meet ourselves where we're at and create the perfect plan for ourselves right now to rock those results. That's why tip number 8 is to assess and address your schedule shifts. I most often talk about assessing your schedule when it comes to designing your workouts, but you want to also assess your schedule to make dietary changes as well. Not only in terms of determining how you meal prep and the meal timing best for you, but also in how you handle weekend eating. Too often we don't see results and we think, but I was good all week. It's that weekend eating that gets us. It changes our macros for the week and can easily throw us out of a calorie deficit. Some of us even recognize how hard it is to eat well over the weekend, but then we never really address this fact. We force weekday habits on weekends that just aren't the same. Instead, we need to own that often our habits and schedules do change over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we need to plan for that. That we do enjoy a happy hour on Friday, or that we're at home more lazing on the couch. So instead of a strict macro ratio, maybe we just set a calorie cap and protein minimum. Maybe we plan in restaurant dishes or cocktails to hold ourselves accountable, but have a bit more food freedom on the weekend with boundaries. The key is assessing why those same habits don't work over the weekends and finding ways to address the changes in schedule and even routines to work with them instead of trying to willpower your way against them. So many of these tips are about shifting the mindsets controlling our actions. And tip number 9 addresses a hard mindset to often change, but one that is so key for us seeing better results from our training. We need to stop seeking to be sore. Soreness is not an indicator that you worked hard enough or you're going to see better muscle gains. I know it can feel satisfying and some of us sickly like it, but honestly, it's really often a sign we don't have a clear program in place, that we're strategically progressing, or that our recovering and fueling isn't ideal. And constantly seeking to be sore may be why we feel like we're working really hard, yet not seeing progress. Instead, everything we include in our workout should be designed with a purpose and repeated and progressed. But just because a clear progression or weekly schedule we can repeat is key, doesn't mean we shouldn't include diversity. Actually, diversity of movement is essential. And that's why tip number 10 is exercise diversity helps us see better results faster. Diversity of movement done over the weekly schedule can help us create progression through the same but different and target different aspects of muscles to different extents. We can diversify the moves we use through different types of resistances, through adding instability, whether an unstable surface or even making a move more unilateral, such as an 80-20 deadlift or a single leg deadlift over a bilateral one, and even through slightly different postures, positions, or ranges of motion. We also have to remember that different muscles in a muscle group may have different joints they impact and control movement of, and therefore will be worked by different joint actions. For example, if you want to make sure you hit your entire hamstring muscle group, you can't just include a deadlift, which is a hip hinge. You also need to include a knee flexion movement, like a lying leg curl. So over the weekly schedule you create, don't just reuse the same moves. Think about including a diversity to target the same muscles in different ways. And guess what? Some of these moves you may not like, and they may feel awkward. Good. Tip number 11 is to do awkward moves you don't like. Those moves we don't like that feel awkward are often also the moves that address our weak links. They often improve our balance, stability, and our mind-body connection, so we ultimately get stronger, can run faster, and see better muscle gains. They're the moves that test our coordination, that make us check our egos with loads. They keep us young and able to react quickly in everyday life, while recruiting the correct muscles efficiently in the right order to perform those lifts we may want to beast mode out on. So stop skipping them. They truly are key to being functionally stronger and often even lifting more with our big heavy lifts. And not only should you stop skipping these awkward moves, you need to stop skipping your warm-up. Yep, tip number 12 is the oh so sexy tip of don't skip your warm-up. Feel like you're getting older and just have to accept aches and pains? You don't. You just have to stop trying to get away with skipping your prehab work and your warm-up. Honestly, this is something we shouldn't have tried to get away with skipping in the first place. And the fact that we did is why more aches and pains add up as we get older. But we can change that by including a proper warm-up now. A proper warm-up makes sure our muscles and joints are ready to work through a full range of motion from the first rep we do with weights. Our warm-up isn't just us wasting time before we get to the good stuff. It's what helps us get results from all the hard work we put in. If you want to lift more, run faster, cycle further, a proper warm-up with foam rolling, stretching, and activation is what will help you do just that. And I know this sucks to hear. I know a lot of what I've mentioned goes against some of what you've done in the past, but you can't expect to see a new and better result doing what you've always done. That's why tip number 13 is to embrace being uncomfortable. Stop fearing something different. That different thing you're resisting is probably what you need to get to a new goal. Because if what you've always done worked, you'd have achieved results already. But we have to step outside our comfort zone and risk being bad at something to learn and grow. Don't hold yourself back sticking with what you just feel comfortable with. Build off of that. Now, that being said, you also have to recognize that the more changes you make at once, the more of a cost you'll feel before the reward. That's why I like clients to embrace being uncomfortable, but also avoid the all or nothing attitude. It's why tip number 14 is to evolve your lifestyle. Meet yourself where you're at to build small changes off of that and slowly push your comfort zone. Because one size doesn't fit all, and there is no perfect plan. Even what used to work for us will change as we are constantly changing. Your lifestyle, body, and needs are not the same now as they were years ago. Not to mention, even our schedule shifts over the year, as well as our priorities, impacting the habits that are actually realistic for us now. That's why we always need to assess where we are currently first to move forward. When you set that GPS to get you to a new location, you don't just enter your destination. You enter your current location. We need that starting point to map out our roadmap to results. Which brings me to the most boring but essential 15 tip: plan ahead. We wouldn't just get in a car and drive around aimlessly hoping to get to our destination, yet that's what we so often do with our fitness goals. We say what we want, then we just start doing random moves and diets. Without a plan, we have no direction. We have no process we can trust, and we don't know what is and isn't working. So ultimately, we get nowhere. Failing to plan is planning to fail. Cliché, and oh so true. Don't repeat the same mistakes. Use these tips and plan out your program to achieve your goals. Which one tip will you focus on first?